the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, it has some people in Taiwan worried about the U.S. commitment to Taiwan, especially as Taiwan faces a greater threat from China. Now, to speak with me about this today is Distinguished Professor at Johns Hopkins University, Professor Hal Brands. Thanks for talking to me today, Professor Brands. Now, do you think we should be anxious here in Taiwan?
I think it's natural to worry after something like has happened in Afghanistan, in part because Taiwan's place in the U.S. security architecture is a little bit ambiguous, and the American commitment to Taiwan is itself ambiguous. But what I would say is that I think context is very important here. And so any time the United States suffers a defeat like this, it's natural for allies to question whether American commitments remain intact. But I think it's worth bearing in mind that one of the reasons the Biden administration was keen on getting out of Afghanistan was to pay more attention to security challenges in the Western Pacific, and specifically to pay more attention to the security challenges that Taiwan faces. The Taiwan issue has really moved to the center of American foreign policy and American defense planning. And so I don't think there's grounds to worry that the withdrawal from Afghanistan will weaken the U.S. commitment to Taiwan over the long term.
And what do you think about the Biden policy towards Taiwan so far, from what you've seen since he's been in office?
The Biden policy toward Taiwan has largely been a continuation of the Trump policy toward Taiwan, which really consists of two related things. And the first is to increasingly put Taiwan at the center of American defense planning. And so to push the Department of Defense to think very seriously about how it would come to Taiwan's aid if Taiwan were attacked, given the critical role that Taiwan plays in the first island chain in the Western Pacific. The second way is basically gradually expanding the diplomatic and economic relationship with Taiwan, whether by making it somewhat easier to do high-level visits back and forth, undertaking negotiations to do a potential free trade agreement, or otherwise moving slowly, gradually, but surely in the direction of a somewhat more normal relationship, normal diplomatic relationship between the United States and Taiwan.
Yeah, we see that, and we're very happy to see that. China obviously is very unhappy to see that, and they've been increasing military maneuvers around the island, even just this week. Do you think that Taiwan should be, very nervous about a possible attack from China within a couple years or so?
I can't say with certainty whether that's something that China would try, although I think that the temptation to try some sort of coercive campaign, perhaps even an invasion of Taiwan, is growing for the Chinese regime as their military capabilities improve and as they worry that peaceful means of bringing about unification will not suffice. What I can say with certainty is that the greatest deterrent to a Chinese invasion would be the seriousness with which Taiwan is being seen to prepare for that eventuality. And so I think that Taiwan's government and Taiwan's population should treat the invasion threat as very real, because by working to meet that threat and to strengthen Taiwan's defenses, it will give Xi Jinping greater reason to pause and think twice about trying such an invasion.
And what about the U.S.? What do you think the U.S. can do to help deter China from attacking Taiwan?
I think what the United States can do is basically focus on the capabilities and concepts that it will need to project power effectively into the Western Pacific. And so there are a variety of things that can be done there, everything from making it more difficult for China to project power far from its shores, to thinking about how American forces can operate in more contested environments in the Western Pacific, which is what they would have to do in a Taiwan scenario. The other thing the United States can do, and is in fact doing, is trying to broaden the coalition of states that China would have to face if it did use force against Taiwan. And so thinking about how Japan perhaps could cooperate with the United States and Taiwan to defend the island, or thinking about the role that countries like the United Kingdom and France and Australia might play in trying to deter and, if necessary, meeting a Chinese assault. I think the bigger the coalition that China has to face becomes, the more daunting the prospect becomes for Beijing.
That's right, and we appreciate all the efforts that the U.S. and other countries have been making, and that they've been speaking out about peace in the Taiwan Strait. Well, thank you so much, Professor Brands, for speaking with me. I've been speaking with Distinguished Professor of Global Affairs at Johns Hopkins University, Professor Hal Brands, about U.S. commitment towards Taiwan.